Okay, Rabbi Sai, let us get started. Good morning. We are on DAF Beis at Beis in Maseches Makkot. It's already on. It's running. One of the things that the Gemara had taught us in a brisa about Rabbi Akiva is that Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that Af ein mishalmin al pi atzman, that if edim-witnesses get caught as liars, okay, false witnesses, but before the beit-din has a chance to hear a trial against them, all that's been admitted is testimony that they're liars, but we haven't actually tried the case and determined what their penalty should be. If they, in the interim, run to another beit-din and confess that they lied in the first beit-din, they will not be punished. So the question is, why does Rabbi Akiva hold that way? So my time at the Rabbi Akiva, k'savar k'nasahu uknas ein mishalim al pi atzma. The answer is very simple, says the Gemara, because there's a principle of moda b'kinas pater, that if a person admits to a crime where the penalty for the crime is a knas, the term knas means a penalty, something that is not commensurate by logic to the crime, but that the Torah tacks on an additional penalty in addition to what would normally be commensurate. And since edim-witnesses do not really deserve what happened to them based on logic alone, but it's a knas, it's an added penalty, therefore if they confess to it before they're convicted, they will be off the hook. Amar Rabba teda sharei lo asu ma'aseh v'neheragim u'mishalmin. So Rabbi says to prove to you that what happens to edim-witnesses is a knas. Look, when they testify falsely to try and get someone executed or to try to get someone to have to pay when they don't have to pay, they haven't caused the death yet. They haven't caused an out-of-pocket expense yet. And yet this Torah still puts them to death or makes them pay for something that they haven't done. So you see, it goes beyond the logical punishment, and therefore it's a knas. Amar Rav Nachman Teda sheharei mamon biyad ba'olam u'mishalmin. And Rav Nachman further says, again, proof that this is a knas and not a normal payment, restitution, is because the money that they tried to get out of the pocket of the victim by testifying falsely is still in his pocket. So they haven't caused him any real loss. So the Gemara says, "Mai nihu d'lo asamaisa hainu d'Rabba." So the Gemara says, what is Rav Nachman adding to Rabba's statement? Rabbi essentially said the same thing, that they've only attempted to cause out-of-pocket expense, but they haven't actually caused it. So the Gemara says, Ema v'chein Omer Rav Nachman. So the Gemara says, you're right. He's not providing a different explanation. He's just saying it in a different way, and is really just confirming the same thing that Rabbi had said. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Eid Zomei Mishalim Lefi Chelko. So he makes a cryptic statement, Rav, that an eid-zomim has to pay his portion of whatever is owed. So, my mishalim lefi chelka. What does that mean? Ilay medahai mishalim palga v'hai mishalim palga tanina. Mishalshin b'mamon ve'mishalshin b'malkus. If you want to tell me that, look, if you have two witnesses, they both lied, and they said that Ruvain owes Shimon $1,000, and they're caught to be liars, so then the two witnesses have to pay $500 each. Is that what you wanted to tell me? Well, that's already been taught in a brisa or a mishnah. We're going to see that later on, that it says in this text that when you determine how much the edim have to pay, you divide it up among the witnesses. But when you determine how much malchus they get, you don't divide that up among the witnesses. If they both try to get the accused to get 39 lashes, each one of them gets 39 lashes, okay? So you don't need Rav to tell you something that's already mefurish in a Mishnaic text. So maybe the explanation is as follows: that in a situation where only one of the two witnesses was proven to be a liar, was proven to be an eid-zomim, so he has to pay his half, and the other witness who hasn't been proven to be a liar doesn't have to pay his half. Is that what you mean to say? Umi mishalim. But in that situation, since when would he have to pay? V'hatanya ein eid-zomim mishalim mamon ad sheyazumu shneim. That an eid-zomim cannot be forced to pay until both he and his partner are proven to be edim-zomimin. So that can't be the case. Amar Rava ba'omer edu sheker he'adati. So Rava says, here's what we're talking about, where one witness confesses to his crime, and he says, I testified falsely. And since he's confessing, and he says, I'm chayiv to pay, so because I tried to cause this person damage, says the Bach, it's a causative form of damage, and therefore I'm liable to pay. Even though he's not believed vis-a-vis his partner, but he's believed vis-a-vis himself. So kol kemine, kevin shehigid shuvenu chozer magid. But the Gemara says that testimony is not admissible, because we have a principle of kevin shehigid shuvenu chozer magid. Once you've testified in court, the court will not admit any contradictory testimony from the same witness. So ella ba'omer he'adnu v'huzamnu beveistin ploni. So the Gemara says, okay, so we must be talking about a guy who travels from beit-din A to beit-din B. In beit-din A, he and his partner testified falsely, and then he goes to beit-din B, where they haven't admitted his testimony before, and he says, I lied, and therefore I'm chayiv to pay. So that's where we say, listen, he's only believed vis-a-vis himself, not believed vis-a-vis his partner, and therefore only he has to pay his portion. Keman delo Rabbi Akiva, Deika Rabbi Akiva ha'amar af eno mishalim al pi atzmo. But 1 second, we just established it according to Rabbi Akiva. If a person confesses to being an eid zomim, he can't be convicted. So how can you make this person pay? And we assume that this statement is going according to Rabbi Akiva. So Ella ba'omer he'adnu v'huzamnu beveistin ploni v'chuyavnu mamon. So the answer is that this guy goes to beit-din B and says, not only was I a false witness, but I was also a false witness, and the beit-din found me liable. So they've already convicted me. So he's essentially, all he's saying is, there is a debt that has been generated by beit-din A because of their conviction against me that makes me chayiv to pay Ploni a certain amount of money. And that's the chiddush. The chiddush is that even though he's not believed vis-a-vis his partner, he can't testify to say that his partner is chayiv. He can only testify that he is chayiv, that I have a debt to Ploni. The beit-din is allowed to accept someone's testimony if they say they owe a person money. And the beit-din will say, okay, give us the money and we'll transfer it over to Ploni when Ploni comes to us. And therefore, that's the chiddush. You might have thought that since he's not believed vis-a-vis his partner, he's not believed vis-a-vis himself. Kamash Malan, that if all he's saying is that the beit-din in beit-din A found me liable to pay because they found me to be a false witness, then we accept that and we just tell him to leave his money, leave a check by the beit-din.
What's the not believe it? Why isn't why would he bother with going to court to testify that he owes money when all he has to do is pay the money?
Maybe he can't find Ploni. Maybe Ploni is out of the country.
In case of them, then they want to be convicted.
Maybe he wants the dafka pay, or like Mendel, maybe he wants the dafka paid in beit-din so that there'll be testimony. The beit-din he wants the beit-din to handle it. Mishnah. Me'idin anu esish Ploni shegiresh es ishto v'lanasan laksuvasa. So here's another case of false testimony. They falsely testify that a man divorced his wife and therefore owes her payment for her ksuva. He owes her 200 zuz. Okay? But then they're discovered to be liars. Now, at face value, you would say, okay, what's the question? They tried to make him liable to pay $200. Let them pay the $200. Not so fast. He already has a debt to his wife. So he owes her that money already. It's just a question of when does that debt become due. So it's really, they're not causing him to pay out something that he wouldn't have had to pay out. He's going to have to pay her out her ksuva anyway. So how do you assess the damage financially that the witnesses have caused him? They attempted to make him pay it out today, when in reality he's still married to her and may not have to pay it out for another 10, 20 years. So v'halo ben hayomu vein lamacher sofa litein laksuvasa. So that's the point of the Mishnah. Eventually he's going to have to pay her anyway. So you can't make them pay the full 200 zuz. So omdim kama adam rotza litein biksuvasa shel zu she'im nisalmena o niskarsha v'imesa yirishana baila. So the Mishnah says something that's a little bit ambiguous that needs to be fine-tuned by the Gemara. But basically, a promissory note, every promissory note has value if you wanted to sell a promissory note, even if it's not collectible today. If, let's say, you are the bearer of a note that doesn't mature for 10 years from now, you could sell that note, but let's say for 50 cents on the dollar, right, 60 cents on the dollar, whatever it is, for a guy who's willing to wait, right? Now, there's something even more speculative about ksuva, because ksuva is not a debt that's guaranteed. Let's say I go over to a woman and I say, I'd like to buy that note from you because I know that eventually you're going to collect your ksuva. She would say to the guy, not so fast, sir. If I predecease my husband, if I die before him, then I don't get the ksuva. He's got to die before me or divorce me. And so therefore, the ksuva may not be worth 60 cents on the dollar. It may be worth maybe only 10 cents on the dollar. So therefore, you have to find the true value of the ksuva, and then the witnesses will have to pay the difference between that and what in other words, what they were trying to cause the guy a loss of is they were trying to make him pay out at full 200 zuz. Find out what the true value of the ksuva is today, and subtract that from what they tried to cause him to pay, and then you'll get some kind of calculus. So the Gemara asks, really, let's fine-tune this. Keitzad shaman. How do we estimate it? And as Rashi points out, there are at least two different ways to make the calculus. Because the ksuva in the hands of the husband is far more valuable than in the hands of the woman. And what Rashi means by this is as follows. Yes, it's true that if he divorces or predeceases her, she'll get her 200 zuz. But the husband stands to lose even more than that if he has to pay out the ksuva today. Because not only does he lose out on the 200 zuz, let's say he designated a property that's worth 200 zuz, and she gets that property upon the termination of the marriage, assuming that she survives him. But there's another benefit that the husband gets, and that's called the kinyan peiros. He gets to utilize that property for the duration of the marriage. He may have crops that are growing on that thing. He may collect rent on that property, and that's ongoing. So it's much more valuable to the husband, that property, than it is to her, that she'll eventually get. So the question is like this. Do you look at what the husband stands to lose right now through their testimony, that he loses his kinyan peiros, in which case, we estimate how many years of rent were they trying to deprive him of in some way? The kinyan peiros, how much would a person pay to be in the husband's shoes, to be able to have control over that property, right?
In addition to the two.
Right, in addition to
right.
the
two
not
together would make
not necessarily in addition to, because the truth is, he's got to relinquish that property eventually anyway. But the question is, what would a person pay to have an indefinite lease on that property until the termination of the marriage? That's one value.
Right.
There's another value, which is, how much would a person be willing to pay to the woman to hold her note, to be the new
right.
owner of that note, and that you would subtract from the face value of the ksuva to get to a payment that they would have to pay out to the husband. So those are roughly two ways of estimating how you would make restitution, and that's the Gemara's question.
But you put the two numbers together, and that's the number.
No.
No?
In the latter case, what would a person be willing to pay to the wife to own her note, to own her ksuva note?
Bearing in mind those two.
Then you subtract that from the face value of the ksuva, the 200 zuz that the property is actually worth. That's one way of making the calculus. The other way is to look at what would a person be willing to pay to the husband to hold on to it, to a lease on that property for an indefinite amount of time. So, Omer Rav Chisda bebal, Rav Nosson bar Oshia Omer be'isha. So we have a machlokes. Rav Chisda says you look at what a person would be willing to pay to a husband, and the Rav Nosson bar Oshia says what would a person be willing to pay to the woman to hold her note. And Omer Rav Papa be'isha uviksuvasa. And Rav Papa just adds, I hold like Rav Nosson bar Oshia, that you look at what a person would be willing to pay to the woman, but only for the ksuva value, not for the nichsi milug. That's how Rashi learns. What is nichsi milug? When a woman enters into a marriage, if she has assets that are chattel, those all have to be marked down in the ksuva, and the husband can use them and even sell them and consume them completely. But he just has to pay her the cash value of that chattel upon the termination of the marriage. Since there was no way for the Edim Zomamin to know how much Nichse Milug she was entering in, that cannot be taken into account, and they can't be held liable to pay that out to the husband. They only pay out the face value of the ksuva minus the Nichse Milug.
In the first case of Rav Chisda, he's talking about the position of the husband. It could be worth more than what the ksuba is written for. The use of the property,
Right.
It could be acres of property.
It depends. You're right. Potentially, it could be. Potentially, I suppose, but I'm not sure whether the Gemara entertains that as a possibility. It seems like from the flow in Rashi that that's not practical. The Mishnah now says, "Me'iden anu bi'ish ploni shehu chayev lechavero elef zuz al manas litna lo mikan v'ad shloshim yom v'hu omer mikan v'ad eser shanim." So here's another case of false testimony. They say that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000, but the loan was only for 30 days, and so the 30 days is coming up, and therefore he owes the money right away. It's then discovered that they were lying, not about the loan. There is a loan that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000, but the debt doesn't become due until 10 years from now. So now again, they tried to cause a loss to Reuven, but how do you assess the damage? So omdim kama adam rotza litein v'yihiyu biyado elef zuz beinos mikan ve'ad lamed yom beinos mikan ve'ad eser shanim. So you evaluate what would a person be willing to pay to have his debt extended from 30 days to 10 years on $1,000 loan. What would you be willing to pay for that? To not have to pay for 10 years instead of having to pay in a month, and that's what the witnesses have to pay to the accused. Amar of Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Hamalvis Chaver le'eser shanim shvius misham taso, ve'afal gav dehashtalo karinim be'lo yigos, sof asi lidelo yigos. So he makes a statement, Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel rather, that if you lend someone money for an extended period of time that goes beyond 7 years, then Shemitah will cancel that debt, even though the debt does not mature, let's say, for another 3 years after Shemitah. The Shemitah wipes it out. Now, the way that the Torah presents the law that Shemitah cancels debt, as it says, Lo yigos es re'eu ve'es achiv ki kara Shemitah l'Hashem, that you're not allowed to oppress or pressure your friend to pay you back, because he can always say it's Shemitah. Shemitah cancels the loan. So, on the one hand, you could argue that the language of the pasuk implies that Shemitah only cancels a debt when I can pressure a person to pay it because the loan has already matured. But that's not how Shmuel's learning. Shmuel learns that even if the loan has not yet matured, Shemitah nonetheless cancels the debt because eventually the loan would mature were it not for Shemitah. That's how he reads the pasuk. So, Masiv Rav Kahana. So Rav Kahana challenges Shmuel's assertion. Omdim kama adam rotza litein viu elef zuz biyado bein litein mikan ve'ad lamed yom bein litein mikan ve'ad eser shanim v'yomar shvius misham taso kulu nomi boy shlu melei. So the question is like this. Look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that what do the Edim Zomamin have to pay when the loan was really for 10 years? They have to pay, how much would a person be willing to pay to have his loan extended from 30 days to 10 years? But according to what you're saying, if the loan was in reality for 10 years, then Reuven owes zero, and he will never owe the money because Shemitah will wipe it out. So then the Edim Zomamin should really have to pay the full face value of the loan. So Amar Rava Hacha b'mayaskinon b'malva al hamashkon u'v'moser shtaros of lebeistin. Ditnan hamalva al hamashkon moser shtaros of lebeistin ein mashmitin. So Rava says, guess what? There is a way that even if a loan is for 10 years or longer than 7 years, Shemitah will not cancel the debt. What are the circumstances? There are two circumstances. One is where the lender takes collateral, because the taking of collateral is viewed as if he's already taken payment for the loan. So Shemitah does not cancel that debt. He can just, because the collateral is in hand. And another example is if a guy goes before Shemitah is up, and he submits his shtar to beit-din. He basically says, beit-din, I hereby appoint you as the new creditor on the debt, then in that situation, Shemitah does not cancel the debt. Shemitah only cancels private debts between a lender and a borrower. But if the beit-din, the government authority is the creditor, then Shemitah does not cancel that debt.
What about a third with the prusbul?
Well, the prusbul is, so that's Tosfos. Tosfos says that a prusbul is an extension of Moser Shtaros of Lebeit-din. Moser Shtaros of Lebeit-din basically is where I physically give my promissory notes to the beit-din. Prusbul is basically a leniency on top of that even though I haven't physically given the notes to the beit-din, I write a piece of paper that says all my debts belong to beit-din. So that's really subsumed under this discussion.
That's Rashi.
So I'm not going to get into the larger discussion. Ika da Amri, Amar of Ayin Tosfos. Ika da Amri, Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Others learn that Shmuel's statement was just the opposite. Hamalvis chavero le'eser shanim, ein shvius misham taso, ve'afal gavda asili de lo yigos, hashtami lo karinam be lo yigos. That Shmuel said something that is consistent with our Mishnah, that if if the debt is longer than 7 years, in other words, if the debt has not yet matured by Shemitah, then Shemitah does not cancel the debt. Shemitah only cancels debts which have already matured by Shemitah, right? Because the Torah says, lo yigos, you have to be able to pressure the person presently in order for Shemitah to cancel that debt. And since the loan has not yet matured, Shemitah doesn't cancel the debt. Amar of Kahana, af ananomi tanino, omdim kama adam rot salitin, v'yu elefsus biyodo, bein litim mikan v'ad lamed yom, bein litim mikan v'ad eser shanim. V'yamar shvius misham taso, kulu nami boish lumelei. So Rav Kahana says, I can bring proof that Shmuel is correct from our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah says that a 10-year loan is not canceled by Shemitah, and to wit, the Edom Zomamin would still have to pay something for a 10-year loan, because, and if you were to argue not like Shmuel and say that Shemitah cancels the loan entirely, then the Edom Zomamin would have to pay the full value of the loan. So Amar Rava, no, hacha b'mayaskinon b'malvel amashkan of Moser Shtaros of Lebeit-din. Did not amalvel amashkan Moser Shtaros of Lebeit-din ein mashmitin. Not necessarily. I could argue that what? That our Mishnah's our Mishnah holds that a loan that's for 10 years is canceled by Shemitah, even though the loan has not yet matured. It's just that our Mishnah could be talking about a 10-year loan where there was collateral, or a person before the end of Shemitah, gave over his notes over to beit-din. Okay. Va'amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Now, the next set of Gemaras, Rashi points out, really are not really germane to our current discussion as much, as you'll see as we go on, but they're statements said by Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, and then either challenged or qualified by Rav Kahana, just like we've seen up until now. Va'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, ha'omer lechaver almanah shelo tashmiteni shvius mishametes. Shmuel is quoted as saying that if a person says to his friend, I'm hereby willing to lend you money, on the condition that Shemitah will not cancel the debt. Now, is that valid or not? So Shmuel holds shvius mishametes, that's a null and void stipulation, and Shemitah still cancels the debt. Leimek sover Shmuel masla mashakasa b'torah v'chlamas mashakasa b'torah tano batal. So it sounds like Shmuel holds that because you're stipulating to go against the Torah law, then that stipulation is null and void. And that seems to be a perfectly legitimate position to take. But wait a minute, Shmuel contradicts himself, because V'ha itmar ha'omer lechaver al manah she'en lecha alai ona'ah Rav omer yesh lo alav ona'ah Shmuel omer ein lo alav ona'ah. But in a similar case, which is not about Shemitah, but what is another financial law having to do with ona'ah. Basically, I go over with someone who wants to buy my widget, and I say to him, I'm willing to sell you this widget on the condition that if I'm ripping you off, you have no legal recourse. If I'm overcharging, you have no legal recourse. That's what ona'ah is. Now, normally the Torah does allow legal recourse for ona'ah, for getting ripped off. But if a guy stipulates it at the beginning, so it's a machlokus between Rav and Shmuel. Rav says you still have legal recourse because the guy is masno mashakasav b'Torah, and he's trying to counter the Torah's law. And Shmuel says, no, it was a good stipulation. So Shmuel's contradicting himself. By Shemitah, he says you can't contradict the Torah. And over here, Shmuel seems to say you could contradict the Torah. So how do you reconcile it? So ha'itmar Allah, Amar Rav Anan, l'didim ifarshali minei Shmuel, al menashe ein lecha alai onah, ein lo olav onah. But al menashe ein bo onah, haresh bo onah. Hachanami, al menashe lo tashmiteni b'shaviyas, ein shviyas misham taso. But al menashe lo tishmiteni shviyas misham taso. So the reconciliation is, it depends on how the stipulation is made. If the stipulation is made to directly contradict Torah law and basically say, you have to accept the conditions such that we completely obliterate the Torah's law, so then Shmuel would agree that's not a valid stipulation. But if you acknowledge the Torah's law is the law, but I demand of you that you forego the Torah's law and you sort of go above and beyond what the Torah says, then that is a legally binding stipulation. So it all depends on how you say it. So in the case of ona'ah, if I go over to a buyer and I say to him, listen, we all know that there's a law of ona'ah. If you're willing to be moichel on the fact that normally you would have legal recourse and you're willing to be moichel on that legal recourse of being ripped off, I'm willing to sell you the widget. So there Shmuel holds it works. But if you say, I'm willing to sell you the widget at a very high price on the condition that the laws of ona'ah do not apply, that's not a legally binding case. You can't say that I'm putting a force field around us so the laws of the Torah don't apply. Of course the laws of the Torah apply, so that's not valid. In the same way, by making a loan. If you say to a guy, I'm willing to lend you the money, and I know that Shemitah cancels the debt, but you have to agree that even though Shemitah cancels the debt, you're going to still pay me the money.
That's okay.
That's legal. But if I say on the condition that Shemitah does not wipe out the debt, well, you can't determine that Shemitah doesn't wipe out the debt. The God said that it does. So therefore, that's not a legally binding statement. Next, Tana. Hamalves chaver stam eno rishai l'tovo pachos milamed yom. So now we have a brisa that says that if you lend someone money without and there's, in other words, I lend you money, and we don't say when you have to pay me back. What's the assumption? The assumption is that a stam loan is 30 days. So, Sover Rabba Bar Barchana Kamei de Rav Lameimer Hani Mili B'Milva B'Shtar Delo Avid Inish D'Tarch D'Kas B'Shtar Batzim Ritlas and Yomin Avol Milva Al Peh Lo. So Rabba Bar Barchana originally thought, well, 30 days is reasonable based on the fact that no one would go to the effort of hiring a scribe and writing up a promissory note for a loan that's less than 30 days. So that's why we assume that it's meant for 30 days. But if it's an oral debt, a creditor can always say, tomorrow, I only lent it to you for a week or for a day, right? But Omer le Rav Hachi Omer Chavivi Echad Hamilva B'Shtar Echad Hamilva Al Peh. But so Rav says, no, my uncle Rabbi Chia taught that it makes no difference. Both an oral debt and a written debt, standard or 30 days if there's nothing been stipulated. Tanya nami hachi, hamalves chaveru stam enu rishai l'tova pachos mishloshim yom, echad hamilva b'shtar, echad hamilva al peh. And that's exactly what the Brisa says. It makes no difference whether it's oral or written. So Amar le Shmuel Rav Masna lo tesev akarech ad mefarshus la hashmaita mina hamilsa the Amar Rabbanan hamalves chaveru stam enu rishai l'tova pachos mila ben yom, echad hamilva b'shtar, echad hamilva al peh. So Shmuel says to Rav Masna, he says, don't rest on your laurels until you explain to me the following. In other words, I demand that I need an answer right away. This is just so bothersome. He says, explain to me, where is the source for this halacha that when there's a stam loan, where the time is not stipulated, there's an assumption that it's 30 days. There must be some basis in scripture or some other source for this measurement of 30 days. Where does it come from? So Amar lei dichsiv karava shenasa sheva shenasa shmita. So Rav Masna said to him, it's based on the double language in the pasuk of Shemitah wiping out debts. Because the Torah says the seventh year is approaching the year of Shemitah. So mimash m'shnemar karva shenasa sheva ein yodea shishnas Shemitah. Why do you need a double language? If you've already said the 7th year is approaching, then obviously it's the Shemitah year. Why do you have to say it explicitly? Ela matam olomer shnasa Shemitah lomer lacha yesh Shemitah acheres shehi kezu ve'ezezu hamalves chaver stam shenoshay latova bepachos mishloshim yom do'amar mar shloshim yom bashana chashuv shana. The answer is like this. There is a second Shemitah year that wipes out debts, or that suspends the obligation for a person to pay. There's the Shemitah that wipes out the debt entirely, and there's another thing that's like the Shemitah year that stops a person or prevents a debt from being paid. And what is that? The period of 30 days. Now, why is 30 days called a year? If the pasuk's talking about Shanasa Shemitah, because, and this is a very strange thing, the master taught that 30 years of a year is considered to be a year. Now, what that means is very difficult to decipher.
Usually it's rove.
It's rove.
Which would be 6 months and a day.
So the way I've always, in the past when I've learned this Gemara, the way I understand it is like this. There are many different measurements of time. You have a second, you have an hour, you have a day, you have a week, you have a month, and you have a year. So there's no measurement of time between a month and a year.
That's the second month.
So therefore, if the Torah is talking about a year, it's a diminished year, and the only measure of time that is less than a year is a month. So therefore, that's how we get this idea that a year that is diminished is referring to a month. That's the structure of how to explain this idea in the Gemara. So therefore, a standard month is just like a Shemitah year, in that it prevents a debt from coming due. Va'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, haposeach beis hatzaver b'Shabbos chayev chatas. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav that if you tear open a collar on Shabbos, you've committed a malacha, and you have to bring a korban chatas. And Rashi explains it's because you're doing something called tikkun kli. You're fixing a kli to make it usable. The way I'm imagining it is that when a new shirt is sold to a buyer, it's stitched completely shut. And you have to tear open the stitching in order to be able to put it over your head. Almost like, when you buy a new suit, some of the pockets and the back is sewed shut. So I think that's the way they used to sell a new shirt. So therefore, by you cutting open or tearing open the stitching, you're creating a kli that previously was unusable, and now it's usable.
Is he also over for Makkot?
Well, that's what tikkun kli is. Tikkun kli is Makkot b'patish. Okay, so Maskif la Rav Kahana v'chima bein zela maguf is chavis. He says, I don't understand. Why is this any different from the permissibility of opening a barrel that hasn't been opened before? You're allowed to tear the cover off of the barrel cover off of the barrel.
Only if you're going to drink it.
And but it's permitted. It's not a malacha. We wouldn't permit it if it was a malacha. It must be that it's permissible because it's not a malacha. So why is there a chiyuv korban chatas by tearing open the shirt? So Amar lei zeh chavur v'zeh eino chavur. So the answer is because the collar is completely sewed shut, and so therefore you have to tear it open and create something new. But the lid on the barrel, there's two discrete separate components. They're an adhesive stuck them together. You're just loosening the adhesive between the two items. So therefore, you're not changing inherently one item to make it now a usable kli. You're just separating two discrete components from each other, and therefore it's not the manufacturing of a new kli. This has a lot of ramifications in the poskim. Let's say opening a can of soda on Shabbos. It is one item, and so by tearing open a opening in the top of the can, some poskim say that it's the same thing as tearing open the collar on the shirt, and it's prohibited. Others say that it's not prohibited because it's a disposable, and for other reasons. What does Reb Shimon have to do with it over here?
No, but how? Because it's in mechanical.
No, this is not a makalkel. This is not a makalkel. It's the opposite of makalkel. You need it. You're doing it.
You want it, but
you want
but,
it.
He's
It's
put
not.
on Makalka.
Yeah, but this is not makalkel. You're not being makalkel over here. You're not doing something destructive. I thought you were going to say it's a davar sheinu miskavin, but a davar sheinu miskavin when it's a psik reisha is also usher. So anyway, there's a lot to discuss over here. Va'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav shlosha slugin mayim shenafel l'sochen kortov shel yayin u'mar'ehen kemare yayin v'naflu l'mikvah lo paslu. Another statement quoted in the name of Rav Yehuda Amar Rav is that if 3 logs of water. Now, the measurement of 3 logs is a crucial measurement, because if I have a mikveh that's less than 40 sah, so it's not a kosher mikveh yet, it's, let's say, a 39.5 sah, and I want to add water to it to make it 40 sah, to make it a kosher mikveh, I cannot add mayim she'uvim. If I add drawn water, which is not kosher for a mikveh, then I've made all of the 40 sah now puzzle for a mikveh. I have to drain the entire thing and start all over again. So let's say I've got 39.5 sa'ah in my mikveh, and I take drawn water that's 3 logs. Now if I have less than 3 logs and I add it, I don't passel the mikveh. But if I have 3 logs of water and I add it to the 39.5 sa'ah, I've passeled the mikveh. But what if I have 3 logs of drawn water, mayim she'uvim, that has added to it a small amount of wine? So I've colored the water to make it look no longer like water. Does it have a din of mayim she'uvim or not? So comes along Rav Yehuda Marav and says, as long as it looks like wine and it falls into a mikveh lo paslu, it does not make the mikveh pasel. So maskef lo Rav Kahana, the chima bein zel meit seva. Why is it any different from colored water? Ditnan Rabbi Yossi Omer meit seva. Meit seva doesn't. I think it's the water that's used for the dyer, right? In other words, when you dye clothing, or you dye fabric, you mix water with certain chemicals, certain plants, and you get colored water. So poslenes hamikvah b'shloshes lugin. There, the mikvah is puzzle, even though the water is colored, doesn't look like regular water, still makes the mikvah puzzle. So why is this wine? Water mixed with wine any different? So Amar Rava Hasamaya Ditziva Mikri Hacha Chamra Meziga Mikri. So Rava says you go according to what it's called. When you have 3 logs of water that's mixed with wine, that's called diluted wine. So we call it wine, we don't call it water anymore, and therefore it doesn't passel the mikvah. But colored water is colored water, and since it's not mixed with anything of substance, and therefore it passels the mikvah. But wait a minute. V'hatani Rabbi Chia horidu es hamikvah. But one second, we have a brisa from Rabbi Chia that says that water mixed with wine passels the mikvah. So you have a contradiction here. So Amar Rava lo kasha Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri harabanan. The answer is, says Rav, it's a machlokes tanoim. And what's the machlokes? Whether we consider water mixed with wine, in which case it doesn't passel the mikvah, or whether we consider it water, in which case it does passel the mikvah. Ditnan shloshes lugin mayim chaser kortov shenafel l'sochen kortov yayin u'mar'in kemar yayin v'naflu l'mikvah lo pasluhu, because the first part of the brisa says that if you have just a little bit less than 3 logs of water, so you don't have enough water to passel the mikvah, and that gets added to it as a little bit of wine to make it up to 3 logs, as long as the appearance is somewhat different from regular water, it does not passel the mikvah.
Because also it was less than 3.
Because it's less than 3 logs.
With the wine, it
listen,
became 3.
That's right. V'chein gimel login mayim chaser kartov shnaf l'sochen kartov chalav amarin kamari mayim v'naflu l'mikvah lo paslu. But we'll go even further. Even if the added ingredient to this less than 3 logs of water is milk, in which case the water is just a little bit cloudy, but it still essentially looks like water, since you don't have a full 3 logs of water, because you added to it as either wine or milk, it does not passel the mikvah. So, but the implication of that Tanakama is that if you would have a full 3 logs then of water, and then you would add wine to it, it would passel the mikvah. So that's the latter opinion. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer Hakol Halech Acher Amara. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that no, it depends on the appearance. And therefore he says that even if you have 3 loaves of water before anything is added to it, if it looks like wine because wine has been added to it, it will not passel the mikveh because it's called wine. But if milk is added, it will passel the mikveh because it's clear. And therefore it's a machlokes. Rav holds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says you go according to its appearance. And Rabbi Chia holds like the Tanakama, who says you go according to how much actual water is in there. We'll hold it here for today. We'll continue this in Mirz Hashem tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.